So now we're looking at Form 4, which we will work on during our in-person workshop on day 3. And this one is addressing the Indian Ed for All, relevance or cultural significance. And here on the right-hand side, we have all of the things to consider when filling out this form. So the first thing I think that's really important is there an appropriate IFA connection to this activity or not? If not, there's no reason to fill anything else out because, again, for IFA, we don't want this to be an add-on. It really needs to be embedded or reliant on the content being taught. So if you answered no, discontinue use of the rest of the form. However, if you answered yes, then let's move through the form. So content dependent is what is being introduced with this item. Is there IFA content that's dependent? So some of these materials, like if we were looking at migration or if we're looking at kind of the domestication of wolves or anything in material, then we might say that the information being presented is dependent on the item, but maybe it's independent of the item, so we would answer no. But there's an opportunity to really connect what happened with the assessment item or task with an activity that would go hand in hand together. And so again, that's not an add-on, it's really embedded or reliant on the content that's being taught. So we would answer no there, and then we would go through the rest of the form. So in 3, identify when the introduction would occur. And so let's say that we're bringing in supplemental information to really reinforce this concept. We would want to kind of describe when that would happen. Would it happen before you introduce the information or after? Is this a readiness check? Is it a post, or is it working congruently? So you would want to describe the steps there. Identify the IFA connection to the content. So be really explicit here on how this cultural connection or significance is directly tied to the content being taught. Number 5, what are the steps the teacher is going to take to incorporate it? So again, that kind of timing piece, before, during, after. Some checkpoints that the teacher and the student take to ensure that there is feedback or evidence of student mastery. And then if we identified that we're pulling in another resource and material, where would we get access to that so that we can link all of these materials together in a one-stop shop for teachers? And so when we come to the end of all of this work and we assemble these materials in one document for teachers to access on the Montana Science Repository online, we want to make sure that we know exactly where to go to get access to the information that you've identified here. And if you don't have a link to it because it's a hard copy or something like that, just make sure that we have access to any of the information that you have identified as being supplemental to this strategy. And comments, and also specific to this section, any sensitivity or bias that we need to be considerate and mindful of. That concludes the information and how to use the form, the checklist, and the item all together for Form 4, which is the Identify, IFA, Relevance, and Cultural Significance.